Hi everyone, to begin the microeconomics analysis, let's look at the background of Japan. Japan is a East Asia island, a nation of 125 million people know have a bleeding Asian culture with the advanced technology. It's an operation under a mixed economy system where the government and the private sector works together to maintain stability, a key challenge for Japan. Its geography, the land is a mountain as and lack natural resources to overcome. This Japan import the raw material like oil and iron oil. Transformation into high-tech export, this made Japan is a global leader in automotive manufacturing, robotics and electronics. Respectation by the brand we all know like the Toyota and Sony is high development, high income country Japan. Its GDP is driven primarily by manufacturing and service. Today we all use microeconomic theory as arch demand and supply elasticity and waves determination to analyze how the international powerhouse of operation under the perfect competition.
2.0 Japan's mixed economic system. Japan utilized as a mixed economy, blending and private sector free market dynamics with strategic government intervention in sectors like healthcare, energy, and transport. So 2.1 characteristic of Japan's mixed economy. So first, Japan is a market-oriented. The economy is driven by private enterprise, especially in manufacturing, technology, service, and trade. Second, there is a significant role of the government. Over the years, the government has contributed to industrial development, research and development, social, securities, and strategic economic sectors. Even though the government's influence has decreased over time, its intervention is still important to support national goals. Third, highly dependent on trade. Japan is highly dependent on trade because Japan lacks natural resources. It relies on heavily imports for food, energy, and export high-tech production to global markets. So for the fourth is, Japan is well known for high-tech innovation. It is a global leader in research, patents, robotic, and technological for production. Finally, Japan has strong social welfare system, although the country faces challenges such as high public debt and aging population. Market and common elements in Japan. Japan shows both market and common characteristics. Market element is a price that determined by supply and demand with private ownership of resources and strong competition. Common element is the government uses regulations, industrial policies and welfare measures, especially in strategic sectors, and to manage environmental issues. Resources allocation. Resources are primarily allocated via market, profitability and consumer demand, with government intervention used to correct market failures and maintain stability. 2.2 Economic decision making. Decisions are driven by three main actors. Consumer guided by income and preference. Second, producers guided by cost, demand and competition. Third is government guided by taxes and subsidies and regulation. So for the conclusion is, Japan's system balance market efficiency with government support, fostering a stable environment for technological advancement and social welfare. Demand and supply petrol in Japan. In Japan, petrol is widely used for transportation, commercial activities, and industrial machinery. Because of that, petrol is an important commodity in the Japanese economy. Demand for petrol uses who uses petrol. There's three groups create demand for petrol: private cars owner, commercial, transportation, industrial machinery. So factors affecting demand. Several major factors influence petrol demand, such as price of petrol. When petrol prices increase, the quantity demanded decreases, but not by much because petrol is a necessity. Income level higher. Income usually means more vehicles owned, which increase petrol usage. Government policy. Policies such as fuel taxes, environmental regulation can reduce petrol consumption. Factor affecting supply. Next, I will explain the factor that affect the supply of petrol in Japan. Crude oil prices. Crude oil is the main input for petrol. If global crude oil prices rise, the cost will rise and supply may decrease. Technological improvement in refining technology or renewable energy can increase the petrol supply. So government regulation policies such as carbon taxes, emissions limit can raise production costs and reduce the supply. 3.1 Market equilibrium. Market equilibrium occurs where the quantity demanded equals to the quantity supplied. This point is called the equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity. If the petrol price is above the equilibrium, there will be a surplus. If the price petrol is below the equilibrium, there will be a shortage. So the government's actions such as subsidies or minimum prices can disturb equilibrium and lead to the excess surplus or shortage. So 3.2 is recent change in market equilibrium. 3 recent trends affect petrol equilibrium in Japan. First, increased global crude oil prices supply curve to shift to the left, causing higher petrol prices. Second, growth of electric vehicle and public transportation. Demand curve will shift to the left, reducing total petrol consumption over time. Environmental policies encourage long-term reduction in petrol use, moving the market toward the cleaner energy alternative. In summary, demand and supply for petrol in Japan are influenced by price, income, technology, and government policies. These factors determine market equilibrium. Recent changes such as increased UV usage and environmental policies are slowly reducing demand in Japan.
What is elasticity? Elasticity is a concept in macroeconomic theory that shows how sensitive the law of demand and supply is to change in price or other factors. In Japan, petrol is a basic need for transportation, industry, and distribution. Understanding the price, elasticity of demand and supply for petrol can provide insight into consumer behavior in Japan. Elasticity of demand. Price elasticity of demand measures how much the quantity demand changes with a shift in price. In Japan, petrol demand is generally price inelastic. This means when petrol price floated, the quantity demand changed only slightly. Why is it inelastic? Petrol is necessary good. Japanese consumers rely on petrol for daily commute and business activity. Even when petrol price rise due to global crude oil rates or fuel tax, consumers cannot easily cut back on their usage in the short term. Therefore, the percentage change in quantity demand is smaller than the percentage change in price. However, in the long run, demand becomes more sensitive to price change. People can switch to alternatives such as electric vehicle, hybrid cars, public transport, and cycling. Japan also promotes green energy and carbon reduction policies, encouraging consumers to consider different transportation options. As a result, price sensitivity tends to increase over time. Implication of inelastic demand. 1. When petrol price rise, total revenue increase for producer and the government through fuel taxes. Number 2. Consumer bear a larger share of price hikes. Number 3. Fuel taxes serve as a reliable source of revenue. Price elasticity of supply. Price elasticity of supply measures how much the quantity supply changes in response to price change. In Japan, petrol supply is price inelastic in the short run. This is due to several factors. Petrol supply relies on imported crude oil, refinery capacity, storage facility, and strict environment regulation. Therefore, producers cannot quickly ramp up supply even if price goes up, as they face high capital costs and depend on global market. Over the long term, supply becomes more elastic because companies can invest in better refining technology, expand storage, improve energy efficiency, diversify into renewable energy and alternative fuels. Implication of inelastic supply. Number 1. Sudden increase in demand or disruption in oil supply can result in sharp price hikes. Number 2. Producers encounter higher production costs during global oil price shocks. Number 3. The government step in to stabilize price. 4.3. Elements that affect elasticity. The elasticity of petrol supply and demand in Japan is influenced by availability of substitutes like electric vehicle, public transport, and alternative fuels. Number 2, time period, which is elasticity increase over time. Number 3, product necessity. Economic activity depends on petrol. Number 4, production flexibility. Limited refinery capacity and heavy reliance on import. In summary, Japan's petrol supply and demand are generally inelastic, especially in the short run. This makes the petrol market susceptible to government regulation and global oil price. However, over time elasticity increased due to advancement in technology, available substitute, and energy diversification.
So 5.0 Consumer Behavior Utility Theory. Utility theory is just a fancy way of saving. How do I get the most happiness for my money? In Japan, people are very careful with their spending. They want to maximize their satisfaction on utility because their income is limited. Convenient is due to busy lifestyles. There is a major demand for ready-to-eat meals and quick service. Convenient is due to busy lifestyles. There is a major demand for ready-to-eat meals and quick service. In summary, Japanese consumers to get the most value of their money. They choose a driver by a mix of a budget, like the impact of a tax and a personal needs, especially high quality delay, conversions, and social status. Understanding there is a factor is a key to knowing how they spend.
Assalamualaikum, my name is Muhammad Irfan. This slide explains wage determination under perfect competition in the perfectly competitive labour market, which are determined by the interaction of demand and supply of labour. There are many employer and workers. Labour is homogeneous and no single firm can control the wage rate. Therefore, wage depend largely on labour productivity. This slide wage determination in perfectly competitive labour market. In a perfectly competitive labour market, firm hire worker until the wage rate equal the marginal revenue, product of labour, or MRPL. So what is MRPL? MRPL represent the demand for labour, while labour supply show the number of workers willing to work at different wage rate. The equilibrium wage is determined when demand and supply of labour are equal. Application to Japan. Although Japan labour market is not fully perfectly competitive, some industry closely resemble this structure. Examples include agriculture, small-scale manufacturing, and certain energy-related service industry. Effect of increase in demand. When the demand for petroleum and energy products increase, firms need more labour. As a result, the demand for labour increase and the labour demand curve shift to the right. This lead to higher equilibrium wage and higher employment level in the petroleum sector. Example from the Japanese petroleum industry. This slide shows an example from the Japanese petroleum and oil-related industry. Japan has many firms involved in oil refining, petroleum distribution, and energy-related service. These firms compete for workers such as technician, machine operator, and maintenance worker who have a relatively similar skill level. Factor influencing wage difference in Japan. There are several factors that influence wage difference in Japan, including skill and education, labor productivity, demand and supply of labor, and the type of industry. Skill and education. In the petroleum industry, workers with specialized technical skill and safety training earn higher wage. Engineer and skilled technician are paid more compared to general labourers. Labour productivity. Higher productivity in oil refining and energy processing increase the marginal revenue product of labour. As a result, higher productivity lead to higher wage in the petroleum sector. Demand and supply of labour. Japan faces an aging population which reduces supply of labour, which favor worker available, which in the petrol industry increase, especially for skilled workers. type of industry. The petroleum and energy sector is capital intensive and high risk. Therefore, firms offer higher wage to attract skilled and experienced workers.
Hello everyone, this slide is about conclusion. Today I would like to present about the conclusion economy of Japan, which is one of the best example of a mixed economy. First of all, Japan practice a mixed economy system where the free market will work together with government intervention. This collaboration help to ensure economic stability and at the same time allow the government to provide welfare service to its citizens. From a microeconomic perspective, Japan achieved this objective by maintaining market efficiently while allowing government involvement in key sectors such as energy, transportation and social security. This balance helps protect consumers and ensure fair access to essential goods and services. Next, based on demand and supply analysis, important commodities like petrol in Japan show good elasticity and inelasticity characteristics. In the short run, demand and supply are relative inelastic because consumers cannot easily change their consumption. However, in the long run, demand and supply become more elastic as consumers and producers are able to adjust their behavior. Moving on to utility theory, Japan consumers are seen as rational decision makers. They aim to maximize their satisfaction while staying with their income constraints. Consumer behavior is influenced by factors such as consumption tax, as well as the converse and percentage associated with certain goods and services. Lastly, the theory of distribution under perfect competition explains the wage structure in the Japan labor market. Different in wage are mainly influenced by labor productivity, skill, labor demand and supply, and demographic factor, especially Japan against population. In conclusion, this study proved that microeconomy models are very important in understanding how an economy functions. Japan remains a developed country despite challenges such as limited natural resources and again population. This clearly shows the effectiveness of microeconomic principles in shaping a stable and successful economy. Thank you for listening.